I'm Michelle Sirois Silver, and I'm an artisan who works with textiles and the hand-hook surface. I would say that the greatest influence in terms of my craft practice comes from my childhood and growing up. And really growing up in a household where my parents did everything. And I have no recollection of them ever hiring anyone to come into the home to do work. So they built the garage, they did the roof, my mother sewed our clothing, they did canning. And so we really had a lifestyle that was a can-do kind of lifestyle, and also one that was built on thrift, working with our hands. And I think that one of the things about that is that as I began to, become involved in working with textiles, is that I already had this pre-existing knowledge in terms of process. And even though perhaps at the time I didn't have words to describe it, it was something that was kind of embedded. So I understood that there was a starting point, which was a conversation where there was an expressed need for something, and then there would be research involved, and then there would be a gathering of materials, techniques, the process of making, and not just the finished product, but also using the finished product as well. So those were things that I would say that really come from when I was a child and growing up. Over the years, my practice has shifted. So when I first began making hand-hooked rugs, I was driven by a need for rugs for the floor, for my home. And so I was quite motivated to make pieces. And then over time, though, as I began working on these rugs, my relationship to the process did start to shift and change. So I started to make work for exhibition. I started teaching. I started to, participate in different kinds of events like the East Side Culture Crawl and First Saturdays, opening up the studio to the public. And so what's happened is that the inspiration has really shifted from predominantly one that was driven by function to one that's a little more conceptual, and really is creating an opportunity for me to engage with people to talk about things that I think are really important. I've been thinking about community. I mean, what does that look like? And when I started to really break it down, it starts to have many levels. So there is a level where it's peer-based. So there are other artisans who are making work for design shows, for exhibition. And so we have conversations about the process of making and what it's like to work within that particular milieu. And then there's also the community where there's other rug hookers who rug hook just for the pleasure of it. And we get together and we sit as a group. Right now we're social distancing. When we're doing it, it's usually on a patio somewhere. But we get together. I have to say, it's always women getting together. And we're talking about the work that we're doing. We share information with one another. And we also share about things that are happening in our lives as well. And then there's another level too in terms of community. And that is sometimes just a one-to-one where, maybe I'm teaching my sister-in-law how to make hand-hooked rugs. So it's interesting because there's many different kinds of communities, and yet there's a thread that goes through all of those communities as well. One of the things about making hand-hooked rugs for me is that I'm making rugs in 2020, and the world around me informs what I'm doing today. but I'm also really cognizant. I'm very, very aware of the people who've come before me and the work that they've done in the past. Really, it creates a base for me in terms of what I can do and what I can build upon. So I'm really aware when I'm sitting down to make a hand-hooked rug that there are thousands and thousands of people who've come before me, and really the work that they've done, I'm really just part of a continuum, actually. Yeah, technology is an interesting question because the the form that I use is so traditional. I mean, it is like slow, right? It's like part of that whole, it was a movement before it was a movement, if you know what I mean. It was a way of life for people. And so coming from that kind of background and introduction into the craft, um, you know, any kind of shift away from that, no matter how subtle, can sometimes be viewed as radical. So for me, technology is something like introducing zippers into my hand-hooked rugs, where now I'm using zippers to attach pieces, or I'm introducing materials like grommets and you know, other types of forms as well into the hand-hooked surface. So that for me, given where I started, is actually a radical departure. Where I'm using, say, digital technology is really if I'm capturing images on my iPhone, and if I'm working with those images in Photoshop, that is really the way that I'm using technology in the work to assist or to really kind of simplify the design process. So the community that I was raised in, what it does in terms of helping to shape my artistic work is that it legitimizes my slow approach. I know that people have been working with these techniques for, you know, again, thousands of years, and there are thousands of people who've come before me. But I think that that in terms of the community that I was raised in, there was a sense of self-reliance and independence in the work that we were doing. And I mean, collaboration is great, and I've done that and I've loved that. But there was really that whole self-reliance, the ability to be able to do something on your own. And also for me to, when I do make a hand-hooked rug, it actually, in many ways, it's a form of resistance for me. And just to try to stay true to what I believe in, and to stay really focused on that. When I was a child, I lived on Vancouver Island for about 6 years, and they were formative years. And I'm originally from Quebec, and when I was a teenager, our family moved back to Quebec, and I did my high school, university in the Montreal area, moved to Toronto after graduating, worked there for several years, and then I moved back out to British Columbia. And one of the things I remember, it was April, and the plane landed at YVR, and we were driving down Granville Street. And one of the things I felt was this profound excitement. And what the excitement was, it was about how incredibly lush and green everything was. It had profound impact on me. And when I make my art, that is one of the things that I'm always looking for, that excitement again. I want to feel re-inspired that moment when I saw all of that lush color. And so I would say that for my work, in terms of the BC aesthetic, I would say a lot of it has to do with color in particular. I'm also really drawn to nature, and nature, not just in a natural setting, but nature in terms of how we live with it day to day, nature in an urban environment. And I think that for me, that's actually a huge underpinning for all of my work, is the natural environment.